Most people dream of owning a successful business, but Marcus Williams had built his from the ground up with his bare hands. Sleepless nights and a heart that never gave up even when everyone told him he should. Was a man who knew struggle, who had faced rejection, who had once been that kid no one believed in. Growing up in a small neighborhood where opportunities were scarce and expectations were even lower, Marcus had discovered his love for design early on. As a teenager, he drew sketches of sneakers and jackets in the margins of his school notebooks, never realizing that one day those doodles would transform into the brand, now recognized on billboards and magazines across the country. The irony, though, was that success had not changed Marcus into someone who flaunted his wealth or demanded recognition. He still liked to walk through life quietly, to blend in, to feel the pulse of the everyday people who had inspired him in the first place. He had a saying, "If I can't walk into my own store dressed like myself, then I don't deserve to run it." It was exactly why on one cool Wednesday morning, he found himself pulling on a plain gray hoodie, worn jeans, and a pair of sneakers he'd owned for nearly 5 years. No Rolex, no designer suit, no chauffeur, just him, a car parked down the street, and a mind set on seeing how his store functioned when no one knew the CEO was watching. As Marcus stepped into the store, the familiar scent of leather and new fabric hit him instantly. The displays were neat, and the lighting illuminated each collection in a way that spoke of careful thought from the visual merchandising team. He paused near the entrance, watching people filter in and out. Customers browsed racks. Employees floated around smiling and offering assistance. At first glance, it seemed like everything was running smoothly. Marcus moved toward a display of jackets. He ran his fingers over the fabric of one, the design one he had approved months ago after countless prototypes. A surge of pride moved through him. This wasn't just fabric, it was his vision come to life. Picking one up, he draped it over his arm and grabbed a pair of jeans. He didn't want to just test the service. He wanted to truly shop, to see the experience through a customer's eyes. That was when he noticed the tall, thin employee standing behind the counter. The man looked young, maybe mid-20s, with slick back hair and a sharp outfit that screamed he took his job seriously, at least on the surface. Marcus walked up, the clothes in hand, and said in a calm, respectful tone, "Excuse me? Could I get a fitting room?" The employee didn't even glance at him properly, gave him a once-over, eyes dragging across Marcus's hoodie, and old sneakers, and then his lips curled into a faint smirk. "Fitting rooms are for serious customers only," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. For a moment, Marcus thought he had misheard. He tilted his head slightly. "I am a customer. I'd like to try these on before buying them." The employee let out a soft laugh and shook his head. "Look, man, don't waste my time, all right? These are premium pieces I need to focus on. Actual buyers. If you're just here to browse, leave the clothes on the rack for someone else." He turned his back before Marcus could respond, his attention shifting instantly to a well-dressed couple walking through the door. With a bright, eager smile, he rushed over to greet them as though they were royalty. Marcus stood there frozen, gripping the clothes tighter in his hand. He wasn't used to this nod anymore. He was used to being treated with respect, not because of his title, but because he gave it to others first. Yet here he was, in the very store he had built, being dismissed as though he were less than. It stung. More than he expected it to. He glanced around, watching the couple receive enthusiastic help while he was left standing like an invisible shadow. The realization hit him hard. This wasn't about clothes. It was about judgment. The employee had decided Marcus didn't look like someone who could afford the products he himself had designed. For a split second, Marcus considered revealing who he was. He could have pulled out his business card, or even just said his name because everyone in this company knew it. The employee's jaw would have hit the floor. But Marcus didn't. He stayed silent, forcing himself to absorb the experience. Because this wasn't just about one rude interaction. This was a symptom of something deeper, something wrong in the culture of his store if an employee felt entitled to decide who was worthy of service. Quietly, he walked back to the rack and placed the jacket and jeans neatly where he had found them. He didn't slam them down or make a scene. He didn't need to. The weight of his disappointment spoke louder than any words could. As he walked out of the store, his mind was racing. He remembered the early days of the company, when he had pitched his designs to investors who had laughed at him, brushed him off, told him his brand would never make it. He remembered standing in lines outside trade shows being told he wasn't important enough to skip the wait. He remembered the times when people had looked at him and decided, based on nothing but appearance, that he didn't belong. And here it was, again only this time. Inside the empire he had built, Marcus got into his car and sat for a long moment, staring at the steering wheel. He thought of all the customers who must have walked into that store over the years, customers who maybe didn't look like they had money, customers who were curious but hesitant, customers who deserved kindness and were met with arrogance instead. How many had walked away feeling small? How many sales had been lost? The anger he felt wasn't fiery or explosive. It was cold, deliberate. The kind of anger that sat in the pit of your stomach and told you something had to change. Marcus wasn't just insulted, he was alarmed. If this employee had the audacity to treat him like that, how many others had done the same thing, unchecked, for months or years? As he drove away from the store, Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow, he would not come back as the man in the hoodie. Tomorrow, he would come back as himself, the CEO, the boss, the one whose name was etched on every paycheck. And when he did, the employee who had dismissed him would learn the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate the person standing in front of you. But Marcus also knew this wasn't just about punishing one employee. It was about reestablishing the values of his company. He had built it on inclusivity, respect, and grit. If he allowed that to slip, if he let arrogance seep into the culture, then everything he had worked for would rot from the inside out. The man in the hoodie might have walked out of that store silently, but the CEO driving away had a fire burning in his chest. He wasn't coming back tomorrow for revenge. He was coming back to save his company from a disease it didn't even realize. It had, and when he returned, things would never be the same again. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the image of that smirking employee replaying over and over in his mind like a cruel loop. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the body language, the unspoken message that said, "You don't belong here." And the worst part? It wasn't the first time he'd felt it in his life, but it was the first time he'd felt it in his own creation. That betrayal gnawed at him. At 4 a.m, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, a cup of black coffee cooling by his side, his laptop open and spreadsheets glowing back at him. He wasn't browsing idly, he was digging, combing through the performance reports of the store he had visited. Numbers never lied, and they told a troubling story. Sales were underperforming compared to the brand's other locations. Customer return rates were low, and there were more complaints in this store's file than anywhere else in the region. Reading them now, Marcus saw them differently, people. Describing rude service, being ignored, feeling unwelcome. The puzzle pieces fit too neatly together. Marcus clenched his jaw and typed out a single email to the district manager, mandatory in-person evaluation meeting. Tomorrow morning, full staff present. No more disguises. This time. He was coming in with both the authority of a CEO and the fury of a man protecting his vision. When morning came, Marcus dressed sharply. A tailored suit, polished shoes, and the sleek watch that had been a gift from his late father. He didn't choose the outfit to show off well-fit was armor, a reminder of who he was, what he had earned, and what he represented. He drove to the store in silence, his mind focused. The moment he walked through the glass doors, the energy shifted. Employees froze, whispers rippled through the store, and the one smug employee at the counter now looked pale. Recognition dawned on his face as his jaw dropped. He stumbled forward, suddenly eager. "Mr. Williams, sir." I didn't know Marcus held up a hand, stopping him cold. His gaze was sharp, steady, unreadable. "Save it," he said in a low voice that carried more weight than shouting ever could. "We'll talk during the meeting." He walked past him without another word, heading straight toward the back offices. In the conference room, the staff, gathered nervously, seated around a long table. Some fidgeted, others avoided eye contact. The district manager arrived looking flustered, as though she'd already guessed this was not going to be a routine check-in. Marcus entered last, his presence filling the room. He didn't sit immediately. He stood at the head of the table, surveying each face in silence. The quiet stretched, thick with tension, until it became unbearable. Finally, Marcus spoke. His voice was calm, but razor-sharp. "Yesterday, I walked into this store. No fanfare, no introduction. No one knew who I was. I wanted to see how customers are treated when they walk through those doors. What I experienced was not just disappointing, it was unacceptable." Murmurs rippled across the table. Eyes darted toward the young man from the counter, who shrank into his chair, sweat beading at his forehead. Marcus's gaze locked onto him. "You, stand up." The employee hesitated, then rose awkwardly to his feet. "Sir, I didn't know it was you." If I had Marcus cut him off, his tone hardening. "That's the problem. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect. You dismissed me because of what I looked like. You decided I wasn't worth your time. You realize what that means? Not just for me, but for every person who comes in here and doesn't fit your idea of a serious customer?" The room went dead silent. No one dared move. The employee swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." Marcus's jaw tightened. He could see the fear, the regret. But he also saw something else, a lack of genuine understanding. The apology wasn't born of self-reflection. It was desperation, a scramble to keep his job. Marcus's gut told him this wasn't the first time. It wouldn't have been the last if he hadn't intervened. He turned away from the employee and addressed the entire room. "This store is failing. Do you know why? Not because of the products, not because of the location. It's failing because of culture. Because too many of you have forgotten what this company stands for. I built this brand to prove that style and excellence are for everyone. I built it to welcome the people who are ignored in other stores, who are judged, who are told they don't belong. If you can't understand that, you don't belong here." The district manager shifted uneasily in her seat. "Sir, with all due respect, we've been following the same training as every other location. Maybe the issue is staffing." Marcus raised a hand. "The issue is leadership. Training means nothing if the people in charge don't enforce it, if they don't live it. I hold you accountable too." His words were heavy, and the district manager lowered her gaze. He let the silence hang, pressing on their nerves until the weight of responsibility sank in. Then he leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but commanding. "From today forward, things change. Customer experience will not be a catchphrase. It will be the lifeblood of this store. Every person who walks through that door will be treated like they matter because they do. If you can't do that, walk out now." The employees exchanged nervous glances, but no one moved. Marcus straightened, his decision made. "As for you," he said, turning back to the smirking employee from the day before, "you're done here. Collect your things. Security will escort you out." The young man's face went pale, his mouth opening as if to argue, but the words died before they could leave his lips. He sat down slowly, the finality of his dismissal sinking in. Marcus didn't gloat, didn't revel in the victory. It wasn't about one man losing his job. It was about drawing a line in the sand. Once. The meeting adjourned. Marcus remained in the room alone, staring out the window at the street below. He thought about the years of struggle, the countless times people had judged him, the walls he had to tear down just to be taken seriously. He had sworn, when he built his company, that no one else would have to feel that same sting inside his stores. And yet here it was, creeping back like a poison. He knew this wasn't just one location's issue. If it had happened here, it could happen anywhere. The thought sent a chill down his spine. He would need to act swiftly, decisively, to root it out before it infected everything he had built. Marcus pulled out his phone and began typing notes for a new initiative. A full audit of all locations, retraining from the ground up mystery. Shoppers reporting directly to him. It's not as punishment, but as a resetter, reminder of the vision that had started it all. As he left the store, The customers who had been browsing earlier looked up at him curiously. He smiled at them, a genuine smile, the kind that reached his eyes. That was what mattered, the people who came through those doors hoping to feel seen, but behind that smile was a steel-hard resolve. Marcus knew he was at war not with his competitors, but with complacency, arrogance, and the dangerous lie that success meant forgetting where you came from. This wasn't just about saving one store. It was about protecting the soul of his entire company. Tomorrow, he would begin that battle, and he intended to win. The following weeks were a storm. Marcus didn't just order changes from behind a desk, he threw himself into the heart of the problem. He traveled to stores in different cities, slipping in unannounced, sometimes in his suit, sometimes dressed like any other customer off the street. Each visit revealed a different reality. Some stores were thriving, buzzing with the energy and warmth that reflected his vision, but others mirrored the cold, dismissive culture he had seen that first night. The pattern was clear. Somewhere along the line, the vision had been watered down, replaced by the mechanics of sales quotas, bottom-line focus, and managers who cared more about numbers than people. And Marcus couldn't allow that. In one city, he saw a young mother juggling her baby while trying to get help finding shoes. The staff chatted among themselves, ignoring her. In another, he saw a group of teenagers of color walk into the store, only to be shadowed suspiciously by an associate, as though they were thieves rather than customers. Marcus's chest tightened each time. It was like staring into the very injustices he had sworn to fight against when he built this empire. But he didn't explode in anger. Instead, he listened, observed, and then called impromptu meetings with each store staff. He spoke with calm authority, reminding them not of sales tactics, but of values. He shared stories of his own youth, how he had once been the kid who couldn't afford the trendy shoes, who had been eyed suspiciously in high-end stores, who knew the sting of being invisible. His words hit differently because they weren't abstract policies from some corporate handbook. They were lived truths. And slowly, he saw some eyes soften, some hearts shift. Still, Marcus's new speeches weren't enough. So he launched something unprecedented in the industry. He called it the Welcome Initiative. Every employee, from part-time clerk to district manager, would undergo immersive retraining. The dry, corporate PowerPoints that lulled people to sleep. But hands-on experiences designed to make them feel what customers felt. They would role-play scenarios, experience neglect, experience bias, and then reflect on it. Marcus partnered with social educators, psychologists, and even actors to build the program. He poured millions into it, not as an expense, but as an investment into the soul of his company. Critics scoffed. Shareholders worried. It's too much money. Some argued in boardrooms. This isn't scalable, but Marcus held firm. If we lose our humanity, we lose everything. We are not just selling clothes, we are selling belonging. And belonging is priceless. The program rolled out and the results began to show. Customer complaints dropped, reviews turned positive, and word of mouth spread. People started to notice the difference not just in the clothes, but in the energy of the stores. Customers said they felt seen, heard, valued. That was Marcus's dream made real again. But there was still the matter of the employee, who had started it all, the one who refused to help Marcus that fateful day. His firing had sent ripples through the company, sparking both fear and reflection. Some employees grumbled, calling it harsh. Others quietly admitted it was a wake-up call. Months later, Marcus received an unexpected letter. It was from that very employee. The handwriting was messy, uneven, as though the writer had struggled. To find the right words, Mr. Williams, it began. I wanted to apologize again. When he came into the store that day, I saw only what I wanted to see. I was arrogant, shallow, and blind. Losing the job was the hardest thing that ever happened to me, but it forced me to confront who I had become. I've been working at a small shop since when I've tried to treat every single person who walks in with respect, no matter who they are. You were right, I didn't understand back then, but I do now. Thank you for teaching me the hardest lesson of my life. Marcus sat back in his chair, the letter heavy in his hands. He wasn't naive. He knew people could say things just to sound good, but something in the rawness of the words struck him. Maybe the man truly had changed. Marcus didn't rehire him. He couldn't set that precedent, but he did send a short reply. I hope you continue to grow. We all stumble. What matters is who we become after the fall. That night, Marcus reflected on how far things had come. The company was back on track, the culture revitalized, but he also knew it would always be a fight. The world didn't change overnight. Prejudice, arrogance, complacency, they had a way of creeping back in when you weren't vigilant. But he also knew something else. As long as he lived, his company would never abandon its founding vision again. Months later, Marcus returned to the same store where it had all begun. This time, he didn't disguise himself, walked in openly. And the atmosphere was different. Employees greeted customers with genuine warmth. Not the fake scripted smiles, but the kind that came from people who understood why it mattered. A young clerk approached him, nervous but kind. Good morning, sir. Can I help you find something today? Marcus smiled. No, thank you. I'm just looking around. The clerk nodded and stepped back respectfully, ready to help, but not pressuring him. Marcus wandered the aisles, pretending to browse, watching how employees interacted with others. A teenager came in, clearly shy, and two associates treated him like a VIP, guiding him patiently. An elderly woman struggled with her bags, and someone rushed over to assist her without hesitation. Marcus's chest swelled with pride. This was it. This was the dream. As he prepared to leave, the district manager spotted him and hurried over. Mr. Williams, things have really changed, haven't they? Marcus nodded. They have, and let's make sure they keep. Changing culture is like a garden, it needs tending every day. The manager smiled, but Marcus's eyes stayed firm. He knew it wasn't a one-time fix. It was a lifelong commitment. Later that night, Marcus sat on his balcony overlooking the city. The lights sparkled, the hum of life rising up from below. He thought about the long road that had brought him here, the discrimination he had faced, the walls he had broken down, the empire he had built with his bare hands and his relentless will. He thought about the employees, the customers, the little kid somewhere who might walk into one of his stores tomorrow and feel, maybe for the first time, that they mattered. And for Marcus, that was enough. He didn't need the applause, the headlines, the glory. His victory wasn't in being recognized as a CEO. His victory was in creating a space where dignity lived, where belonging was real, where no one would ever again be told, you don't belong here. As the night deepened, Marcus whispered to himself, this is just the beginning. Because in truth, it was. His company wasn't just a brand, it was a movement. And movements didn't end. They grew. They spread. They endured. And Marcus Williams, the undercover CEO who once walked into his own store and was denied help, had turned that single moment of humiliation into a revolution. A revolution that would outlast him, outshine him, carry his vision forward into a world that desperately needed it. That was the real victory. That was the story's end.